When you're picking up heavy weights in life and you make the decision to, hey, face that weight, there is a confidence that you build. Your nervous system is like, oh my God, I'm nervous about this thing. I'm nervous about this thing. And then you do it, you start seeing what you can do. You only get there by like truly failing. You have to fail at it in order to reach the next level. That is exactly what that experience was like for me. Being comfortable with the fact that this is not a linear journey. You will fail, you will have to pivot, you will have to find another way. And I started realizing I could achieve things. Things started changing. I was only weightlifting, Naomi. Since
Yeah.
I was in my 20s, I have been suffering from hypertension. It's one of the heart diseases. I strength trained and weightlifted for 6 weeks, and my blood pressure issue went out the door.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't a quick transaction, but it was an investment that I started putting into myself, and the returns started coming. It's one thing to move, but when you're being taught how to move with intention, it's you see it in that space, and it's just beautiful because, like I said, it's not like an instant transaction. It's an instant feeling that you get, and they start believing. I am amazed by that moment.
Your work is deep, Almeta. It's
Thank
deep.
you.
It's like every time we connect and chat, whether it's over food or at the cafe, I'm always so in awe of how you talk about being connected to self.
Oh. Well, first, thank you for acknowledging that this work, it is the work that I am doing, but that this work in itself is deep because it is deep to me. And it's serious. It's really, really serious. The outcomes of it is sitting right in our faces. And because we are navigating such busy lives and we're competing with all these external factors throughout our lives, we are not able to sit in the reality of what is happening right now and that is affecting and impacting us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Power of Why podcast. My name is Naomi Haile, and today I'm here with the incredible Almeta Brown. Almeta, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I feel like we've been talking about this episode for over a year. And so the fact that we get to record this together in this season, and specifically in these like 2 weeks where
Mhm.
we've both had a lot of beautiful, unexpected things happen. I'm grateful that we're here doing this today. So thank you for making the time. So for the audience, I'll give you a little bit of background about Almeta. We actually met in Harlem. This was in 2024, 2025, if I'm remembering correctly, at a really awesome spot called Silvana. And I remember coming up to you and asking if you were a student. And you were like, what? It's like we were classmates together. She was looking stunning, wearing her workout gear. We chatted then, and I feel like we became like fast friends and have just grown from there. And so Almeta is a strength coach, a therapist in training, a wellness practitioner, and her work lives at the intersection of trauma-informed care, nervous system regulation, and sustainable strength building. And her approach really challenges the traditional narrative around health and performance, which I love. Instead of asking how much can the body endure, she asks, what does it mean to feel safe, strong, and supported in your own body? And through trauma-informed strength training, she helps clients build physical muscle, of course, but also resilience, learn how to trust themselves, and really understand what their capacity looks like and how they can build capacity. And so her current focus centers on redefining health, especially within Black communities, how rest can function as an essential tool for regulation. And she has competed, in the past in bodybuilding competitions, and everything that she teaches, it comes from experience and is rooted in real life. And so I'm really excited for you all to meet my incredible friend, to learn from her framework and all of the life experience that she brings to the table. So again, welcome. I'd love if you could kick off by sharing a little bit about how you grew up. And yeah, were you the kid that colored inside the lines? Were you messy? Were you like out here making your own way? What were you like as a child?
Well, first, thank you for that introduction, Naomi. That was beautiful. Thank you. So As a child, I definitely did not color outside of the lines. I grew up in a very structured home, raised by my mother and my grandmother. They were both educators. My grandmother was an educator and an administrator, and my mom was an educator as well. And so um, I was witnessing one thing and also experiencing something else. In so many ways, my family taught me how to create joy. And I feel that when you're a Black woman, you can't color inside of the lines when you're creating joy. And so I was taught to do what you need to do.
That is okay, if you understand what she meant, and if you don't, it wasn't for you.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I love that. Yeah. Um, so yeah, like we had to create joy and also create moments of rest, but also get things done. Do what you need to do in order to get things done. I remember when I went to college, my mom was like, "Hey, I'm not sending you to college to just sit in books, right? Like, you're supposed to go have fun and meet people, like, come back with experiences. I want you to go and enjoy yourself." And so, yeah, there's a lot of structure and a lot of discipline that it takes to achieve different things. But when you are navigating this world and it's time to create and take the things that you need, there's no color inside of the lines.
I wonder how many people got that advice from their parents going to college. Like, there's so much learning to be had outside of the classroom. I feel like my advice was get an A in every single class and, like, be it, like, head in books, but through time, just there is so much to live, and so did you take that advice to heart? How did that end up playing out in terms of your experience in college and everything that you learned that set you up for adulthood?
Yeah, so I was 18 when I received that message. So as soon as I got to college, of course, I focused on having fun, right? And I did not necessarily understand the balance, but it was something that I quickly grasped, like that having that awareness of, okay, this is what you have to do. These are the expectations. I remember when it was time to graduate, I was questioning whether or not I was graduating with honors. And my mom goes, yeah, I wouldn't graduate without honors. You need to make sure. Yeah, like make sure you were graduating with honors. So the expectation was instilled in me very early. Definitely, it played out, right? Like I had to go through that journey of like learning how to balance things out. Once I graduated and continued to work, of course, I took myself very seriously and got right back into the structure that was instilled in me like as a child. And so I had to go through, and still now going through those phases of finding balance in between rest and creating joy and then making sure you do what you need to do in order to secure the things that you need to secure in life.
Yeah, you're such an incredibly like disciplined and focused person, and it shows in how you lead your business, how you support your clients. And I'm curious because when you like early in your career, you were in academia and you worked in higher ed. I'm wondering what your personal journey was learning about strength and setting like fitness and setting that foundation up. Did you have that early on in your childhood and as you were growing up, or was this something that you learned on your own?
So prior to starting strength training and working in strength training, I had studied healthcare management for my bachelor's, and then I went on to study health policy and management. So I like to think that there was a foundation that I was building. I didn't have complete awareness of the steps, but momentum was being made, right? And I just held on to again doing what I needed to do. My mom, she had some really good hitters with some of the things that she would say. But I remember we were talking about having a plan A and a plan B in life. And she told me to secure plan B first and then you go for plan A. And so I almost felt like that was what was happening for me. I had like other dreams and goals of how I wanted my life to feel that I wasn't necessarily sure how to get to or what exactly that vision was. I just knew things did not necessarily feel the way I wanted to feel, but to just keep keep going, keep putting one foot in front of the other, and again, back to the goal at hand. At the time, it was education because that was a value and something that was very important in my home. And so, yeah.
You talk a lot about capacity and being in tune with your body. I remember when we first, I think, grabbed lunch together, you were talking about the mind body connection and just a lot of the research that you've been doing and then experiencing one on one, like actually doing the work. Before you started your health journey and that's never ending, right? Like you're always on a health journey. What was your relationship? Because I want people to kind of understand also where they are in their own health journey and what that can look like. So, for you, before you started investing in strength training and learning more about that world, where were you at in your health transformation journey? And how did you move through your days in that season? How did your body feel? What did you believe was normal about health?
First, I did not have a belief system in like what I could achieve when it came to my health, right? My physical health, as well as like my emotional health. I didn't have this strong belief in what I could achieve. And so, in a lot of ways, because of those limited beliefs, sometimes I just would not take a step, right? And I didn't also like get to an opportunity to like explore those parts of myself. I was in New York City working my 9 to 5, hanging out with friends, going to happy hour after. My social life was inclusive of alcohol and food that I don't eat, right now in my life. And so it was a point where I ended up navigating a great deal of grief. I lost my mother and my grandmother, and I remember feeling very disconnected from myself, blank, blank, empty. And it was something that I had expressed to a friend who was also navigating a similar experience. And so we ended up getting invited to a fitness, like a group fitness class. And that is when I started activating like different parts of the momentum that led me to where I am at right now.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I'm really sorry for your loss, Almeda.
Yeah.
Because when you first started your story, you shared that you were raised obviously by your mother and your grandmother, and so they were very clearly like huge pillars in your life and in your family's life. And it's amazing, like in the years of hosting this podcast, how often like a moment where there's loss, there's grief, a great deal of pain, devastation that ends up in some way being a part of healing and growth and transformation and uncovering what your purpose is and how you want to serve. And so it's amazing to hear how that in some way was like a catalyst for what you're doing today and how you're helping people.
It was a very critical, it was my critical moment, right? I like to think of that moment of where I had collected a lot of energy that did not feel productive and good, right? I had a lot of love in me and sorrow. I was carrying a lot of weight. I like to think of things in terms of like weightlifting, muscle building, bodybuilding, but I was carrying a lot of weight and it was like sitting inside of me and I did not know what to do with it. I did end up getting a therapist and we were on the phone one day and we had talked about the fact that I ended up meeting people who were bodybuilders. In that moment of activation in those group classes, I ended up being connected with bodybuilders because that's what happens when you join wellness groups, right? Or a fitness group. They had invited me to do a couple of sessions with them for free. So grateful because this was the moment that like transformed my life in a really, really good way and also transformed the energy that I was holding. And
Mm,
so I was telling the therapist about this and goes, okay, well, we just discussed a lot of things that you're holding and carrying. So as you go into these next couple of sessions, as you pick up weight, I want you to think about the weight you're carrying and leaving it there and dropping it as you put it down. And I still utilize that same tool when I'm bringing other people in, right? I'm not a therapist, but I am curious of what it is you're dealing with and your why for bringing yourself into this space, right? And so I try to make them aware, and that's the trauma informed part of the work is making sure you're aware of what you're carrying and what it is that you're trying to put down in this space.
Wow, you sharing different pieces of advice that you've received over your life at different stages, and you remember every single word, and you apply. That's powerful. At that time in your life, because you mentioned feeling like you used the word blank
Hmm.
and like empty.
Hmm.
What did you believe your body was supposed to push through,
Hmm.
like no matter the cost?
I was raised by people who lived a life of service. I was raised by Black women. The women in my family, in particular, I have a large family, but the women in particular are givers. Within my family, within their communities, and within the work that they do, they give, they give, they give. And that was something that I had to sit with when I lost my parents, right? Like they had given so much. And it was hard for me to ignore the fact that I was in a space now where there was this expectation of giving. And I
Mm,
was like, wow, like where is the receiving, right? And what am I doing about the receiving? What am I giving to myself? And what am I giving away? And so I was normalizing the pain of giving because there was this a lot of giving and not a lot of receiving and not a lot of recollecting of myself, right? And you do that when you rest. So I wasn't resting. I was enduring a lot of pain. I was ignoring things that the micro down to even the microaggressions that I would deal with in a workspace. I thought that my strength was in how much I could take,
mm,
right? And then also how much I could give without receiving. So it's super layered, but the emptiness was due to the giving. The blank feeling was due to the giving and not knowing how to give to myself and to rest and to sit and to recollect parts of myself that had been stripped and taken away from me.
wow. And I think in this season, like we talked about what we're both going through right now and just like what we're seeing with clients and with our friends, it's an interesting time right now.
Hmm.
And I think understanding how you actually did that over time. How long did it take to learn how to give to yourself, and what does that even mean?
Yeah. It's for sure a process, right? You don't live for 30 plus years and also give for 30 plus years and learn and adopt and inherit some of the values wrapped around those behaviors and then heal them in like two years. Right? That wasn't my experience. It took years. It took years because, like I said earlier, you first have to believe, right? You first have to have a belief and a hope that you can be that. And this is one area of our life where we don't have evidence of the work that
Mm,
we do, right? Everything else we do, there's evidence. Like, oh, I'm going to college, I'm going to take these steps, and I'm getting a degree. We don't have that where we're going to the gym and working out. There is no immediate transaction. But what you can do, and I always think about the process of muscle, is equip yourself with knowledge, right? Educate yourself. Find and do the research, not the research outside of you. There's a research that we need to do within, right? And you start doing that research, and research takes time. And for me, I lost my mother and grandmother months apart in 2018. We're now in 2026, right? It took me about 8 years to get to a place where I could speak to these things and work through these things, but also I had to do the research, the trial and the error, and the failing, right? It took a lot of failing to get there, and you have to get comfortable with those aspects of it.
When you said research and the research is not external, it's well, in addition to, but within, what kept coming up was, like, poking
Mhm,
and, like, as you go through your day and through various, like, life transitions and moments, there are things that come up that we
mhm.
think aren't there or that we've already worked through, that you need to almost, like, interrogate in a
Yeah.
kind but firm way to say, "Okay, what was that?" And you're almost having, like, a conversation with yourself. So what did that research look like for you specifically, if you're open to sharing, or what can it look like for people who, yeah, maybe need a little bit more specifics?
Yeah. So, I remember when I first went to therapy and my friend goes, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." She had already gone down her healing journey and started, but she had been doing it by herself and she was, "I'm so proud of you, but I'm here for you if you need me." And I in my mind, I was like, "Oh, she's so serious right now. What does she mean?" And I wasn't aware, right? I did not know how hard it would be. And I love that you said poking because you will always have to go back to some part of yourself, right? And it's like small little things that can trigger like a moment, a scent, a moment, an interaction with someone. Someone might look like someone. Someone might also be going through grief and want to discuss that grief with you. So you're always in a process of what felt like failing to me because I needed it to work. I needed the session to work. I needed the therapy session to work. I needed the workout that I just did to heal me at that moment. But when you're picking up heavy weights in life, right? And you make the decision to, hey, face that weight, there is a confidence that you build, right? Your nervous system is like, oh my God, I'm nervous about this thing. I'm nervous about this thing. And then you do it, you start seeing what you can do. And then when it comes to weightlifting and it comes to building muscle, you only get there by like truly failing, right? You have to fail at it in order to reach the next level, right? And so that is exactly what that experience was like for me. Being comfortable with the fact that, like, this is not a linear journey. You will fail, you will have to pivot, you will have to find another way, and you have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. Or at least sit with it,
Dig
and
with it. Yes. Sit with
and you do build that over time.
mhm. It takes time.
So before okay, I really love so I mentioned earlier you talk about mind body connection, capacity, building self-trust. Before we go into a little bit more about your practice today and your framework and just some of your like belief systems and philosophies around strength training, I would love for you to like bring us into the heart of your work because it's your work is deep, Almeda. It's
Thank
deep.
you.
It's like every time we connect and chat, whether it's over food or at the cafe, like I'm always so in awe of how you talk about being connected to self and how you relate things that people don't understand. Like people, the average person doesn't really get a lot when it comes to fitness or just taking care of you, or like there's a lot of competing advice out there, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you, as Almeida, could build like a new standard for what health is rooted in, what it looks like, what would that look like? What would you ask people to like let go of? What would you require us to start celebrating? I'm so curious.
Well, well, first, thank you for acknowledging that this work it is the work that I am doing, but that this work in itself is deep because it is deep to me. Like it feels deep, it is deep, and it's serious. It's really, really serious because the outcomes of it is sitting right in our faces. And because we are like navigating such busy lives and also we're competing with all these external factors throughout our lives, we are like not being able to sit in the reality of what is happening right now and that is affecting and impacting us. And so I mentioned earlier, I have been studying healthcare, the policy side of it, administrative side of it. I feel like I know the systems and the structures throughout. So study healthcare management in undergrad, study health policy in grad school. And so the one thing I always noticed was how those policies and structures determined and managed our outcomes, right? Right. The numbers are there. We know the maternity death rates for Black women are 3 times as higher in comparison to white women, right? We also know how chronic diseases affect us and affect our Black community. So, like, when you look at policy, when you look at history, when you look at bias, and when you look at how those things exist within the healthcare system, it's very hard for me not to consider and think about how policy and systems live in our bodies, right? How they determine our outcomes. And so when I got on this side of it, I started realizing again, when you're not painting us out of the lines, I also get to create and figure out my own outcomes. I also have power, right? And I did not, no, I did not have the belief system, but it wasn't by my own decision making. I've been navigating the same road that everyone else has. It was when I took rest, right? And I took a lot of rest during the pandemic. And then that is when I started facing some of my fears. It happened physically by picking up 135 pounds and saying, okay, I'm going to lunge this. I had so much anxiety doing that, you know? And so I started taking those steps and I started realizing I could achieve things. Things started changing, right? I was only weightlifting, you know me. Since
Yeah.
I was in my 20s, I have been suffering from hypertension. It's one of the heart diseases. I strength trained and weightlifted for 6 weeks, and my blood pressure issue went out the door.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it wasn't a quick transaction, but it was an investment that I started putting into myself, and the returns started coming. Right? And so at the heart of the work is my experience, but it's also the experience of so many Black women. What I should have said earlier was that my mom passed when she was 48. The
Mm.
one thing, like I said earlier, I always think about how policy, systems, structures, education, racism, how that stuff lives inside of our bodies. As I started having these experiences and improvements and started evolving through this practice, it was something I wanted to give to women that looked like me. Because
Mm.
it's not that they're not equipped, they just have yet to receive the knowledge, right? Or the tools. Or maybe they don't believe at this moment. Maybe someone hasn't shown them, right? And so I wanted to make it accessible too. Because let's be honest, like we know Black women are killing it out here, right? In all areas of life. But it doesn't necessarily make certain healthcare spaces accessible to them.
Mm.
I wanted to find a way to make it inviting, to make it believable, right? To make it worth the investment. And I'm still on a journey of figuring that out and how to scale those things. But that is what was at the heart of my work. I know what happened behind us and I know what could happen in the future, right? I know what we can control. I know what we can do on a daily basis. And I wanted to give that to people who were going through the same thing that I was experiencing.
Wow. Your why is very strong, Almeta.
Thank you.
Yeah. If y'all I'm so glad that we get to have this conversation because like yeah, we mentioned the work is deep. You said the work is serious and it really is like life and death conversations. These are the circumstances that we're talking about when we talk about your work. When you mentioned battling hypertension in your 20s, I know when you started strength training, it was on an invitation, right? But when you stayed consistent with it, were you consistent because you're like, okay, this is how I'm going to reverse certain things that I'm navigating in life when it comes to my health? Or, yeah, what was your reason for staying with it?
When I first started, again, I met the individuals that brought me into the work, super grateful for them until this day. There were a couple of things that were happening. So there was a community aspect of it where I got into a session and I'm around all of these fit, muscular, strong looking men and women, and that community invited me in, right? So that was like major component. And then I started moving, right? I was not like a major athlete in school. I was a cheerleader. So I'm tall, like I'm 5'10", so people usually that I played track, that I ran track. See, I'm even saying play track. So I ran track. I did not, but I think in the sessions, the first session, I took it very seriously. I wanted to truly learn, but I had never lifted that way before, right? Some of them were bodybuilders and Pilates instructors. And so there was a different level of tension and connection and time that would go into lifting and carrying weight and breathing and all these things. I remember feeling so good after that first session. And I had done workouts before in group settings, but they were fast paced and I also would hurt myself and not necessarily be truly connected. I didn't have time to take my time in the sessions, right? And I also didn't have the basics down. But once I started learning the basics, and I live for a moment of learning, it felt like I was learning and it felt like I was connecting and I would like again, I would feel full. Those endorphins, they worked. I was like, oh, it works. Like this is real, and that kept me going. So I would feel full, right? Like, and this is something I've learned over time, right? How to enter into a space and know what it's giving you when you leave, right? And so I would go into that space I would work out. It would be challenging. I would learn something new about my body because I started thinking about what did I just engage just now and in order to achieve this particular constrict and this stretching and constricting of this particular muscle. And so that felt invigorating and it felt empowering. Yeah, we underestimate the level of empowerment that happens in a gym and how it can translate outside of the gym when we're navigating regular life.
Big.
Mhm,
Such a huge impact.
mhm.
Man, that could be a whole other
Um,
conversation.
yes.
What you'd mentioned, I love that you said the endorphins worked because I think about the woman you were describing before and feeling empty and like it was it was the very opposite state that your body was in.
Mhm,
And what you mentioned of like coming from givers, like that was you, that's an example of you investing in you and filling your own cup. And
mhm.
I love the story arc here.
Thank you.
And through all of that, through feeling good, through investing, like you had all of these other results that came from it.
Mhm.
And it really is about extending your life too. Like extending your life and increasing the quality of it when you are here.
Yep, yep. It truly is. It requires you to be present, right? In a way to understand what that quality of life could truly feel like for you. For me, I would not take certain risks. Right? Like I was holding on to a lot of fear, right? If someone were to ask me, what's the biggest thing you took from this work? It was releasing fear, right?
Mm.
So that I could understand the quality of life that I deserve, so that I could explore those things and feel okay exploring them, right? Like I said, I was raised by educators. So I knew how to create that joy like one day a week. But how do you incorporate that, right? How do you build the courage to incorporate that throughout like every single day of your life, throughout your
Mhm.
purpose, throughout your work?
Mhm. I mean, that's the ultimate question. You'd mentioned how it working out helped you release fear, take risks.
Mhm.
I remember the first thing I did when I moved to New York was join a boxing studio. That was the first thing I did. before I even figured out what cafes were near me. I
Mhm.
had researched a few studios in Manhattan. I had reached out to the trainer and said, "I'm moving and I wanna be a part of this gym." Like, I messaged them on Instagram. And
Yeah.
so, side by side starting work, I would, like, go downtown, take my class in the morning, and come
Mhm.
back up and go to class, like, for school. And so when you mention, like, how much that work of, like, investing in your physical impacts everything else, I found it impacted like, I just felt so strong. I felt like anybody who would try me in the
Listen,
streets,
that's right.
just know I have a mean punch.
Okay.
So, like, yeah, it's the confidence, it's the self-belief, the empowerment that you mentioned, trust, like,
Mhm.
just trusting that you're gonna figure it out
Mhm.
physically, and then also in your life when you are coming across challenges as we do. With your clients, Almeda, when someone begins working with you, what are some of the patterns that you've seen, around their the emotional shift that you see them undergo? Like, even before the physical results start to kick in, like, what are you seeing bubble up in them as they start training with you?
Okay. So, like, the question even brings me so much joy because I just thought of all of my clients who I love, by the way. They're amazing. I love the oohs and like the ahs around awareness. Like when they start becoming aware of like how their body is connected to like movement, right? My favorite thing to say is like nothing happens in isolation, right? Even when you're putting your finger up, I want you to think about your core, right? And the core is the center, right? And so we dive deep into the core. We dive deep into like grounding the body. One of the things I coach into is breathing, and it's amazing. It's one thing to see them like achieve like uh, a max, right? When it comes to carrying load, it's one thing to see them achieve that, but when they become aware of how their body is connected, that in turn sparks that belief system. And I know we'll be able to keep going, to keep growing, to keep evolving. Because it's one thing to move, but when you're being taught how to move with intention, it's you see it in that space. You see it in that space, and it's just beautiful because like I said, it's not like an instant transaction. It's an instant feeling that you get and they start believing in it. I I am amazed by that moment.
Yeah, this is so good. For you, because 'cause you'd
Mhm.
mentioned, yeah, I'm curious to know, like, in your own words, what does it mean for like, when it comes to movement and helping somebody feel safer in their body, what does that actually mean tangibly?
Movement and safer in your body. When I think about movement, I think about like your nervous system, right? When I think about the safety, I think about the confidence and the self trust and the courage. I think both of them take a level of knowledge, right? And it then also takes some time to get to that place of safety and trust of your body. Movement we need, right? In the gym, you need movement. In life, you need movement, right? You need momentum, you need energy, you need connection. Those things show you things that you probably can't show yourself in a moment. And I think when you connect that to the courage and the confidence, it's hard for me not to think about the process of muscle building, right? It's hard
Yeah.
for me not to think of those things and how they create and you can be in the space of evolution with those two.
When you were describing earlier the results that you see with your clients early before they see physical results,
Mhm.
when you don't see the things you named off, belief, the sense of, like, empowerment happen early. What do you first of all, have you seen that? Like, where we're not getting momentum, we're not seeing some of those early, like, emotional wins. Have
Mhm.
you seen that before? And if yes, what's getting in the way of being able to truly connect with your body and build up that capacity?
I have seen that before. I will never forget the first time I saw that. And It was something that I had to find peace with. It was one of my failures, right? And I had to think about that person as a whole and all that they were navigating in life. And it went back to the belief systems and all of the things in which they were connected to outside of their body that were playing a more powerful role in how they connected with their body, right? One thing I recognize in clients that sometimes have a hard time in that space is there is a lack of breathing. I
Mhm.
know, right? I can bring it to like a behavior. There's sometimes they're not breathing while we're moving, right? They're not breathing in a workout. They're not connecting in that moment. They're not believing in what is happening. A lot is happening outside of them, and they're having a hard time finding evidence for what they're working on. So yeah, we're dealing with blocks, right? We're dealing with mental blocks, emotional blocks, and other blocks that they may or may not have inherited.
Change is hard.
It's very challenging. Yeah,
It is,
it's
and,
very challenging.
as a coach, there's another episode that will be coming out with a money coach,
Oh,
and, so much as we were recording, I was thinking about you because 'cause I'm like, so much of whether we're talking about money and you're helping people in that area or movement and fitness, whatever area of life, you're always gonna come up against the internal beliefs that this person has,
mhm.
to be able to get them through that transformation. You recently went back to school.
Yes.
Which I remember when we had the conversation about you deliberating and to do your MSW, and right now, you're a therapist in training, you approach your work with a treatment plan mindset. What does this mean for people, and what are the types of questions that you really hone in on to be able to create an approach, collaborate on an approach for someone's, health plan and what their outcomes can look like?
Collaboration is key. I'm glad you said that. The one question that I ask before taking a client on is their why. Like, why is it that you're looking to strength train with me specifically? What is it that you need? Why do you want to change? All of the whys. We come together in our first session. Of course, we have to figure out. I conduct an assessment, and then we talk about what their goals are because everyone has a physical goal. Nothing is wrong with that. I do believe this work, like beauty and all the confidence is a byproduct of doing the strength work, but people have physical goals and I definitely respect that and take it into consideration. But from like a treatment plan perspective in therapeutic services, as I am learning, because I am not a practicing therapist right now, it is a collaborative thing that happens. I've been fortunately doing this right now with my clients for a while, but in the first session, I asked them different questions about what they're learning right now based on how you just did this movement and with the education I've provided, what are you learning about your body? What do you think about that movement? How did that make you feel? I always ask them, how might this show up in other areas of your life? Right. And then we come up with goals, right? The internal and the external goals that they're trying to achieve.
And you're asking that, in training as well, while you are.
Yeah, yeah, we go every session, first session to our ongoing relationship with each other. Um, every like movement should be done with intention. And so I am going to provide you with how I would do this, right? Like this is how I would do this lunge. This is how I would engage my core. This is how I would connect with my pelvic floor. This is how I would think about my foot when I'm doing a lunge. This is my breathing pattern. I make sure every single one of my clients incorporate a breathing pattern in every move we do. That's so important when you're carrying weight in life. You have to breathe. And so I make sure we collaborate. And there are times when my breathing pattern, like it won't work for them. So I ask them, so how are you breathing now? Right? How are you stepping forward? How are you moving? So we come up with a coaching plan together. And then I act as a guide and a motivator, right? Because not everyone comes in and feeling fully motivated. So I'm a guide and a motivator in that space.
Yeah, it's fleeting for sure, which is why, having that consistency and accountability,
Mhm.
from someone who actually cares is so important.
Yes.
We touched on it at the very beginning about capacity, and I wanna know because you had mentioned something to me off camera about how we're being stretched right now. We're coming to a touch point around what our capacity looks like, what it is, what our limits are. How do you specifically define capacity in your work? And how do you look at that outside of the aesthetics or like your body weight or personal records?
Yeah, so when I hear, like, capacity, I think about the stretching, right? I think about things that we can't control that we might end up being faced with, and I think about whether or not we're equipped to navigate those things. And so it takes me back to first your belief system and having the strength and the courage, right? Those are so important to actually sit in that moment of discomfort, right? When you're building muscle, again, muscle, when you build muscle, it requires you to stretch and constrict that muscle, stretch and constrict, right? In order for it to grow and to expand. I think it's a similar approach in life. You will have to constrict and then you would have to stretch. You need to rest. You need to eat well. You need to feel nourished. I think the same thing happens. And that is my role in that space to provide you with the education and the motivation on that and to think about how that's happening here and how it's happening in your life.
If someone who's listening feels strong in their life, like let's say they've built up capacity just like through their life experience, but they're tired, definitely tired and probably like worn out. Can you, in my mind, I'm like, I meet a lot of people like this, and I have a few people in my life who are like this. What questions should they ask themselves to understand whether their capacity is stretching or if they're like getting into depletion territory and it's actually like harming them? What is when you mention stretching and capacity, like how do we maybe that's just where rest comes in. Can you talk to us about that?
That's exactly what I was thinking. You're on it, Naomi. By the way, you've always been on it. Like, you know this work. I don't know if it was from all of that boxing, but you know this stuff. Yes. Yeah. There's a resting that needs to happen, right? One of the intentions I set for my clients this week was resting in small ways. And we use the principle in the gym, but of course, I want them to use it outside of the gym as well. But that is necessary for you to not collapse. You can call it depletion, I call it a collapsing. And so, how do you find ways when you're being stretched, when you're contracting, right? How do you find ways to rest in small ways? And it's time for them to definitely rest, right? Ask themselves a question: when have you felt truly rested, right? It's not enough sometimes to just take a day off. For me, it isn't. I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I have to sit with myself and truly recollect parts of myself that I may have given too much of. How do you find ways to rest in small ways? And I'm going to go back to reps, right? My clients are doing lunges at times. I actually can speak to a client of mine who we are, she's right now very strong and super fit, amazing, and super dedicated and committed to her fitness journey. But sometimes we do workouts where I make her stand on an 18-inch box holding hundreds pounds of weights and breathing, right? I don't want anyone to get scared when I say this, but she's fully equipped for this, by the way. And I don't do this to everyone, but she's equipped and we've been working together for a long time. But sometimes she has a fear of
Yeah.
standing too high on boxes. She's afraid she's gonna fall. And so one of the things that I recognized and realized with her was that she was rushing to get through each rep. Like, you're rushing to get through each rep, so it's making you more fearful because you're
Mm,
not sitting in this moment. And she wasn't finding ways to rest while she was stepping up and coming down, right?
mhm.
It's a lot of things. She's like, it's just so much to think about. It's a lot to think about. I'm like, yes, but just be present and breathe and find ways to rest while you're doing the movement, and you'll get over that hump. And I think it's a similar principle for life. Like, find ways to rest in small ways because you don't want to collapse. So I think that the question they should ask themselves is what did their rest look like? What happened and how did we get here? And then also using that knowledge to create the next point in their journey, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Almeda, what does your rest look like?
I am taking rest very, very seriously right now. I wake up at 6 and I see clients all morning. And like you said earlier, I am also a therapist in training that requires a lot of my time. There were things that I had on my plate that were not actually in service of the person that am trying to become. So I let those things go so that I could afford myself more rest. So when it comes to fitness right now, I am doing cardio twice a week and I'm doing strength training work 3 times a week, right? In the past, my strength training required me to get dressed and go to this huge gym where I had access to all these different weights. And that's not happening right now. Right now, I wake up at 5 and I try to incorporate deep breathing and thinking while lifting weights now in my living room, right? And so I can't afford to travel as much because I have to go and take care of my own clientele. And this has been proving to make me more effective in my work and more present in my work as well. And so it was a hard lesson because, like you said, it's a season. And that is exactly what I did. I look back to the last 4 months of my life, and I was taking on so much. I had to learn how to balance like this new school schedule
Yeah,
while balancing my clients. And the one thing that I did not balance well was my own fitness regimen. And so, like, how can I get my meditation in? How can I get my strength training in? How can I make sure I'm nourishing my body? It requires me to rest more. It requires me to wake up earlier, right? And it requires me to come up with something that truly works for me.
I love that.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. There is and as we I don't wanna end this conversation, girl, but as we near the end of this conversation, there's a question that I've been really loving asking people, which is, what is a decision that you've made in your life that didn't look right on paper, but ended up changing the course of your life and business even, if you
Well,
wanted it to be a professional thing?
Naomi. Okay. Yes. So when I went to grad school, this when I first went to grad school, I hated it,
Right.
Naomi. Yeah, when I first went to grad school, I hated it. I was disconnected from it. I felt like I now know that like I couldn't see myself in it, right? And
Mhm,
then I felt like I couldn't see myself in it, but it actually now that I'm at this part of my life, not seeing myself in it is so important. It was such an important lesson because
mhm.
it is exactly why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. The only way I saw myself in it was in the health outcomes that outlined how these systems that I was being trained to work in were affecting and benefiting off of my illness. People that look like me, that had a similar lived experience as me. And so a part of my career journey, I left healthcare because I was so infuriated, with it. I was mad about what I was working in, what I was doing. I did not like it. It was on paper. At the time I went to that program, it was the number one program for health policy and management, in the United States. But now looking back, it definitely served a greater perfect purpose. It's again at the foundation of my work, right? I have to look back to know where I'm going, and that theme applies to my decisions and the things that I've studied.
Mhm.
It applies to my family. It applies to policy. I do this work because policy sits in our body. Political decisions manifest in our bodies. And so, yeah, I studied health policy. I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, I would need it now.
Wow. And this feels especially timely right now.
Right now, it is.
Yeah. For people who feel disconnected, if you're speaking to them and also to Almeda like 8 years ago, what but, like, really wants to feel stronger, build their capacity, they wanna feel more grounded, what would you invite them to do in the next, like, 30 days?
Connect, and I say connect, and I'll tell you how, but connect because that builds momentum. That is how you will develop energy. And then that's how you'll start to figure it out. But you can only figure it out if you connect first. Now, I did it through joining a community, right? Like it's not the community that I was in, but that community connected me to my community. And you could I'm in New York, and so there are a couple of like fitness studios around me. And by the way, let me say, connect with the right community. My community needed to be wellness. Okay. Like I needed movement in every sense of the way. Those people were in movement. The work that we were doing were in movement. We were in momentum, right? Doors open. We hear these things when we're younger, or we hear these things when we're not exactly tapped. And again, because it does not show a guaranteed evidence, there's no evidence in it, we don't go after it. But being in a room can do a lot for your future in the right room. The room that I needed to be in was a room where people were working on their bodies.
Yeah.
And I would take advantage of those spaces. I would go to fitness classes for the next 30 days. And then while doing it, rest in small ways for sure.
Mm.
Rest. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's definitely the highlight of this
Yeah.
conversation. And then lastly, like what is your greatest hope for Black women, especially those who are carrying like invisible that weight you were talking about? What's your greatest hope for people to feel seen, like supported, encouraged to pursue a version of health that really honors like their life and their lived experience?
I want us, when it comes to our bodies and the movement that we make with it, I want us to have more presence with what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and how those things are showing up in our body and where, right? I believe that there's a lot of power in us discerning and knowing when to disconnect from outcomes and to give ourselves an opportunity to be very present in what's happening right now with us. And I think if we can do that, I think it's very powerful because it will deepen our awareness of ourselves, and we get stuff done. Like we get it done. And I know there is no way that someone will sit with themselves and things will surface for them and they wouldn't do anything about it. I just feel that we haven't had the opportunity to, because of all of the other competing priorities or conditioning or things that are taking up space that don't serve us. So I want us to disconnect from outcomes and connect to right now, connect to our present so we can start our own internal research.
Mic drop. Several drops. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you, Naomi.
world, Almeta, such a light. Thank you for doing the work that you do. Thank you for being here and sharing with new people who might not know you in my community. And I really encourage you to follow Almeta, the work that she's doing, because she will change your life. She will.
Thank you,
And if
Naomi.
you're in New York,
I'm here.
yeah, you already know what to do. Exactly. So thank you. Thank you again. Thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen to this episode of the Power of Why podcast. We will catch you in the next one.